Just released Buckeye Weekly last night. Today, talking about the expectations for Milin Graham, 5-star wide receiver coming in, and then also discuss some of the more of the information coming out on the college football EA Sports college football game. And at some point today, I'm trying to finish up a Big Ten draft that I'm doing, where every Big Ten team drafts a Big Ten player from the current rosters, and based on the standings last year. So I think Indiana gets the first pick, and you can only one player from a team can be drafted. So once Dylan Gabriel goes number one, no more Oregon Ducks can be selected, and so Michigan's draft pool will be like one school by the time it gets down to the final team. So I'm finishing that up, and that'll be at some point this afternoon.
They'll be selecting Indiana's best wide receiver.
Who's that? Michigan? Well, yeah. I mean, or the best available quarterback, maybe. But yeah, I've gone back and forth. I have them selecting a wide receiver, but maybe a quarterback might be the way to go. I don't know.
Steve, Bucknuts.
Yep. Mentioning Milin Graham, I actually talked to him 2 days ago. He's coming from Fort Wayne, Indiana area, New Haven High School, and he was the number 33 prospect in the country, number 7 wide receiver. He is one of the rare late enrollees. I think 14 of the 21 or 22 guys enrolled early, and now it looks like 6 people will be coming in late, which is Milin Graham, the wide receiver, Gabe Van Sickle, an offensive lineman, Dominic Kirks, who they flipped from Washington late in the process, defensive lineman from Painesville, Ohio, Demarion Witten, tight end, wide receiver, Max LeBlanc is a tight end from Tennessee, I believe, who's coming in late, and there's one more player that escaping me, maybe a DB or something, that is coming in as well. So those guys will be enrolling on Monday for the start of the summer semester, and will immediately be thrust into Coach Mick purgatory, whatever that involves during the summer. I presume a heavy regimen of lifting and running is probably the 2 things that I think are probably going to happen for those guys here in the next 2 months. So, Milin Graham, to me, sounded like a guy who is intent on coming in and trying to push his way into the 2 deep as a true freshman. And it's an uphill battle, obviously, but there's only one experienced wide receiver on the roster, and that's Emeka Egbuka, because they lost both Fleming, to Penn State, and Harrison to the NFL, and then nobody else really played much. So, Tate Ennis played a little bit, but didn't do much. So, and Ballard's never really played yet, in 3 years. So, they've got a bunch of guys who, are hoping to get spots in the 2 deep, but, coming out of the spring, Ennis was hurt, so he really didn't get to prove it or show it, in the spring, although you expected the starters to be Tate, Ennis, and Egbuka. But Jeremiah Smith had such a huge spring that you got to think he's number 2 right now behind Egbuka, and Tate would probably be number 3, and then Ennis 4, Ballard 5, maybe Rogers 6. I don't know. It kind of gets murky from there. So I think that Milin Graham is going to come in and have a chance to shake some things up. And if, he plays well in preseason camp, he could be out there, in those early season games to see what he's capable of doing. He is certainly you don't want to lose sight of him just because he wasn't the number 1 overall player in the country, Jeremiah Smith, and because he wasn't there for spring football. He's still got a chance to impact this team this year. Had a great interview with him that we posted. Got some other odds and ends on our site. Bill Kurlick talked about 14 prospects in the 2025 class and their likelihood to sign with Ohio State, whether it's hot, lukewarm, cold, however you want to, look at it. He broke it down, so gave you an idea of some of the guys that could be looking at the Buckeyes for that 2025 class, finishing off what should be another top 2, 3, 4 class, whatever it ends up.
With Milin Graham, one of the things we talked about is I went through and looked at the history of Ohio State true freshman wide receivers and like what to expect for him. And I took off the top 4 and just eliminated them, which is Ted Ginn, Garrett Wilson, David Boston, and Chris Carter, because I don't think you can expect that. But the 10 like below that, the average season, and we're talking Marvin Harrison, Emeka Ibuka, Duron Carter, guys like that. The average season of those 10 is about 11.5 receptions, 158.5 yards receiving, and 1.5 touchdowns. So we set those as the lines, the numbers, the over under, and only 2 guys have gone over on all 3 of those. And they were Chris Olave and Devin Smith. Everybody else is, and only 4 guys went over on 2 of those. So it doesn't sound like a lot. 12 catches, 159 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns for like a 5-star guy. But even though it's not a deep room, it's top heavy. So it's going to be difficult for like a June enrollee guy to come in there and do something significant, I think. But he could end up inside or outside. He's trained at both. He worked in the slot as a senior last year. He was injured last year as well, which kind of sucked for him. But he's a big play guy that is dangerous with the ball in his hands.
Well, don't they need one of these first-year guys? And Jeremiah Smith is the most likely candidate to be much better than Carnell Tate was last year. And I'm not taking away from Tate because he was a first-year player. And I'm not talking about just statistically. He obviously didn't have the opportunities. Just he did not look like he was a top-end Big Ten player in his first year at wide receiver. But they need that out of one of these guys.
Well, and Tate is 18 catches of the 5th most for an Ohio State freshman of all time. So like in terms of receivers, so like he's at the top of those 10 that I mentioned, but yeah, they need, and I fully expect them to get more from Jeremiah Smith. And I think it was maybe after the first couple of spring practices where I said 1,000 yards for him, which, 15 games, 16 games, you're talking 62, 63 yards a game. But I would expect if we set the over-under on Jeremiah Smith at Chris Carter's freshman records, and he owns all of them in terms of 41 catches, 648 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Like if those are the numbers, I think I'm going over on catches and yards, and I might. I don't know if I throw anything down on the touchdowns because 9 touchdown catches for a freshman is a lot. But yeah. He does need to have a significant season, and I fully expect it to be him outside, Carnell Tate outside, and Emeka Ibuka in the slot. And they've got the possibility that those 3 guys could all be 1,000-yard receivers, unless they're running the ball too much.